Time now to take a look at the morning papers. Back here with me to review them are the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and the broadcaster and journalist, Afia Hagan. And still one eye in, and I'm still excited to have Dawn actually in the studio with me. After a few weeks, I might settle down a bit, but for the time being, it's very exciting. Anyway, welcome back to both of you. We're turning inside the Sun to kick us off, Dawn, aren't we? Because we dealt with lots of front pages in the last hour, covering the nurses' strikes. But inside the Sun, you found a double-page spread focusing on today's Grand National.
It is. It's the bit. It's on the front page of every newspaper as well. The National today, the biggest, richest horse race meeting of the year, actually, and gets everybody has a little flutter on the Grand National, don't they? So, understandably, lots of coverage. I picked this particular one, Anna, because it's the feel-good factor. There's lots of controversy around the race, as we know, because of horses getting hurt, etc., etc. But I picked this one because it was Ladies' Day yesterday. Gorgeous pictures of ladies in the rain. It was like 7 degrees, and some of these girls, they look gorgeous, they all look stunning, they all having a really good time drinking champagne. But it was 7 degrees, and they're wearing less clothing than I wear in bed. And it's like
freezing.
How do they do it? Drinking lots of champagne. The other story on this page, which is another feel-good story, is about the lovely Rachel Blackmore. She's riding today. She's on Ain't That a Shame, which is one of the favourites, 8-1. She obviously became the first female winner 2 years ago. And she is riding against her boyfriend, though. Her boyfriend of 3 years in the same race, Brian Hayes. He's on 14-1 shot Mr. Incredible. So they have a huge rivalry on the course as well. So it'd be interesting to see if he actually beats her this time around as to whether they're still talking tonight. But they share a flat with a lad called Patrick Mullins, who's given an interview. He goes, look, if either of them win, they get this big bottle of champagne, etc. Neither of them drink. So they bring it home to the flat. I'm quits in.
Works for him.
Exactly.
Yeah. So some great pictures there. But as you say, protests are being planned as well, aren't they? So
it's
we might be a different news
yes.
story by the end of the day. Who knows? We'll see what comes out of that. I'm talking to Animal Rising a little bit later, so we'll find out what they have planned. But in the meantime, Afia, take us to the Mirror, I think it is next, and a story that you found in there about prepayment meters. So what's this focusing on?
Yes, a slightly more depressing story to say the least. And that is, figures are saying that it's about £1 billion owed in debt on prepayment meters. And this comes after we had I think it was towards the end of last year or the beginning of this year, how British Gas were going into people's homes, people who owed them money, disconnecting them and putting them on prepayment meters. And it's usually the people who are in the poorest in society, to be honest, that are on these prepayment meters, or sometimes landlords put them in flats and some people don't have a choice whether they're on them or not. And they are traditionally more expensive than being on a direct debit with a gas or electricity company. There's a story here about a woman who's £600 in debt on her prepayment meter, which means she can't operate a stair lift. She has disabilities, so she's really living in poor conditions. It also says that it takes people who are in electricity debt an average of 4.5 years to pay that off, and people who are in gas debt an average of 4 years to pay that off. Now, when we're in this time where we have elevated energy prices, as well as a cost of living crisis, there's calls that these debts should be written off, or more help that given to people who are on these prepayment meters, and who have these debts that they simply cannot pay off. And often, like I said, when you're on these prepayment meters, your gas and electricity is much more expensive than it would be if you had a direct debit through a gas and electricity company. So perhaps it's time, first of all, that the price of gas and electricity through these prepayment meters came down, and so it was the same across the board. And perhaps if you have a debt that's going to take 4.5 years to pay back, when we're in this cost of living crisis, when we're in this time of heightened energy prices, perhaps it's time to think about writing those debts off as well for people.
Okay, yes, and some sobering personal stories there in that article, aren't there? Take us on to the front of the Mirror now, if you would, Dawn, because we've had an announcement today about all the stars that are going to play at the concert for the coronation, but there's also that serious side of security that has to be considered.
Very interesting story. This is a Daily Mirror exclusive. They can reveal that forces in England have been filming and profiling anti-monarchist groups regarding threats to the coronation, which, as we know, is on May the 6th. Thousands of people are expected to be on the streets. But they are saying there are more threats from lots of different groups this year, so they have been closely monitoring, which has upset some of the groups, but not just the Republic group, who have already targeted the king already, haven't they? And it's had eggs thrown, I mean, when he was on York and Luton, but also eco-protesters as well, who are concerned about, we've been talking about the National Anna, talking about the fact that horses will be involved, pulling the coaches, and is it cruel to the animals? So and obviously then there's the Irish situation as well, obviously very big in the news at the moment, so they also fear that Republican groups might be targeting it. So they've been monitoring these groups. So security is going to be incredibly tight. But as the Republican group, who say they're going to protest peacefully, no violence or anything, but they're very concerned about the level of surveillance that their members have been placed under by people monitoring the security situation. And the interesting stat buried away in this story as well is that 35% of people do not care very much about the coronation at all, and only 9% care a great deal. So, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
That's interesting, but it'd be interesting to see what the audience figures are like, because I suspect lots of people will tune
absolutely.
in.
I mean, 46% of us are going to watch it on telly in any case, aren't we? How can you avoid it?
Well, yes, I wonder what the viewing figures would be like compared to the last coronation.
Yeah,
anyway,
right.
when lots of people bought telly especially, didn't they? I don't think we've got very long, have we? We've got 40 seconds.
Oh.
Afia, can you quickly take us to the Daily Express, because it's connected? Despite it all, the king is proud of Harry, they say. Very briefly.
Absolutely, we had news this week that Prince Harry will attend the coronation solo without Meghan Markle. And yesterday, the King was at a passing out ceremony at Sandhurst, and he talked of the pride in both his sons, who both were in the military as well. And he said that both his sons would be proud of the cadets who are passing out there. And yes, a lot of people extrapolated this to say that he's saying that he's proud of both his sons. He's happy that they're both going to be attending the coronation, but we cannot expect a reconciliation anytime soon.
No, I think you're probably right there. Anyway, Afia and Dawn, for the moment, thank you. See you again in the next hour. Thanks very much indeed.